In the Great Depression, food was something scarce. People grew their own food and had to make do with what they had. Potatoes and carrots and cabbage were main staples, along with some grains like barley. Today we're going to focus on the Great Depression and a poor man's supper, or a hobo supper, which consisted of root crops. This is footage taken in the Great Depression. And you can see that in the garden, everyone had a little bit of something planted. A lot of areas had extreme drought, and it made things hard to plant. Today I'm going to show you a meal that I make. It's just simple. Now, my ancestors were never troubled too much with the Great Depression. They all lived on farms, and they fed themselves by the farm. But of course, there was a limited amount of gasoline and things like that. In a simple home with simple meals and a simple garden may seem mundane or boring, but that is how you can survive when all of a sudden your income, crashes or becomes very low. So what is the secret recipe, you may ask? How to make this Great Depression hobo soup? Well, to be honest with you, it's a different recipe for every single person. It's what you have on hand. And that's what they did in the Great Depression. They didn't go to the community grocery store and buy anything unless it was needed. Today I have all of these potatoes that are in tin cans, and I'm going to be using them simply because I want to get them used up. Now, you can add ground beef to this soup, or you can leave it plain, vegetarian, and have a tomato base. I did add a little bit of ground beef to mine, and now we're going to add all of these ingredients. So we're going to add some canned potatoes that I got at the discount grocery store a while back. I'm talking maybe 3 years ago. And then we're going to add other ingredients. So we looked in our pantry, and what did we have? I had canned tomatoes that were canned 5 years ago. I'm going to go ahead and use them. Wait a minute, maybe it was more like 4 years ago. And we're going to use them and carrots and everything that we can find. In the Great Depression, it wasn't just the poor people that had to learn how to save their money. It was all walks of life, even people that were high income before the stock market crashed. They became low income overnight. And that's why you hear these tragic, terrible stories about people over that time. But yet, there's encouraging stories of people who got together. People who came together, neighborhoods, and helped one another. I think people took care of each other a little better than they do nowadays. Nowadays, we have social media. We got iPhones, flip phones, we got iPads, Androids. We got every device that you could ever imagine. So we feel like we don't need to rely on one another. That's a sad thing, isn't it, though? In other countries, people rely on each other. In other countries, people help one another. And it's a lesson to be learned because, history always repeats itself. For years, every summer, every waking hour, I was canning. And now I'm reaping the benefits of it because I don't have to can quite as much because I have such a stocked pantry. And so I'm using up different foods. Imagine these foods were growing a couple years ago and they're fresh today, just like the day I canned them. So I had some of these whole tomatoes that didn't quite get used up because they were whole tomatoes. And I always went for the chopped tomatoes because it was easier to use. But now I'm using up the foods that I normally wouldn't grab. And so we're cutting up these tomatoes, which takes quite a few minutes. Home cooking usually is not fast cooking. It's cheap way of living. And that's how it is with everything. You can live very cheap if you do the things that you have to pay other people to do. So if you do all of your own services, like trimming trees like we did the other day, all of these things help us save tremendous amount of money but it takes a lot of time and effort. So let's see what else is going to go into this soup. One thing in the Great Depression is they didn't throw anything away. And so here is a head of cabbage. Now on the outside of it, it looked quite rotten, and a lot of people would throw that away. But if you just peel off the outer leaves, soon you will find you have a great vegetable that you can use in soups and stews, and you can use it in all kinds of things. So the cabbage can go into the compost bin, and that's where I put it. I have 2 trash cans that are always beside me. One is for the compost, and one is also for throwing away. And also I will take some of the cabbage to our daughter and her chickens, which were my chickens, but they're hers now. So now what I'm doing is I'm just cutting it all down and using some of it for the soup, and then some of it I'll put it in a bag, and then I will give that for a later meal. As you can see, it's beautiful, and it's white, and it's nice, and it's fresh, and it's the way to use up kitchen scraps and use up things that were in your pantry for a long time. So we're going to go ahead and cut all this up, and then we're going to put it into our soup. I added some barley. I have a lot of barley in my long-term food storage, and the barley just adds a little more substance to it. All I do is I put the barley in while I'm cooking, and then it will simmer slowly on the stove for about an hour to an hour and a half, and it smells absolutely so amazing. When the children come, they want to see what in the world is Mama making today. I pulled out a bay leaf, if that's what you saw. I had a bay leaf in it, and now I'm just going to go ahead and add a little of my own Mrs. Dash from all of my herbs in the garden. And now we can enjoy a beautiful meal, the style of the Great Depression. I'm going to leave you with a few clips of the years past.